Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we're gonna be revisiting this subject about this price increase for Power BI Pro. Um, and for no other reason that you can't let good content, creation opportunities like that, like this, just pass you on by, really. And again, I want to start this out by saying it's Microsoft's product. They're they're they can price it however they want to, right? I just think it's interesting from about how much of an outlier it is, and I'm going to get into that in depth in this one. But so the first thing you might be thinking with this is like USD 14 versus USD 24 is like, well, maybe Greg, maybe that's the monthly price. Like if you're buying Power BI Pro and you're on a monthly plan, so you're paying month to month versus an annual commitment. The problem with that is that that's not what's being referenced here. And the reason I know that is because Power BI PPU is already $24 if you buy it month to month. Okay. So it's on the annual plan, it's $20. Um, if you buy Power BI Pro on the monthly plan, it's $12 actually. Nobody buys it that way. They all make an annual commitment, so it's $10 per month. So that's how I know that what they're referencing here really is a 40% increase all over on the annual way of purchasing Power BI Pro or Power BI PPU. So let's wanted to get that out of the way. I'm making, I said a lot of what I wanted to say in the last video on this, but I've had a time to kind of break this down and analyze it, make fun of it. So, for example, let me see. I made this Power BI Pro price change analysis report. I published it out there to the data stories gallery. It's got the Power BI Pro, and it's got all the different bunch of the different base crap visuals that Microsoft has, and it shows the difference between the old and the new value. So I thought that was fun, and I linked my video out there on it as well. And it actually has a second page, which you can't get to because the key influencers doesn't show up in a published to web. But this is where like had a lot of fun. I got a lot of traction on LinkedIn on the second page of this. If I can find it here, which is this key influencers visual that says when category is greed, the average price increases by 4. So I've been having a lot of fun with it. Again, you can't let content opportunities like this just pass you on by. But I did want to do it. When I started digging into this a little more and thinking about this a little more, it actually became worse than what I originally had thought about it or pictured it. Right? I mean, already I knew that okay, 40% is kind of a crazy number, right? It's kind of a crazy increase compared to the increases they've been doing in the past, like with Microsoft, right? The changes they made to Microsoft Office, Microsoft 365 licensing, that sort of thing was, basically 5 to 6, 20 to 22. So I started putting this into a spreadsheet, okay? And I'll show you what I found here. So it's very quite interesting, I think. So I put it into a spreadsheet and, 5 to 6, 20 to 22, 8 to 20, 10, and you can see the percent difference, right? That's a pretty simple calculation, right? So we have the highest we have is 25, and it goes as low as 9%, right? And the interesting thing here is if you actually take this and then you take the average, see there's the average. The average is 15%, right? It's right on the money of 15%. And that includes when they jacked up Dynamics licensing recently. They jacked it up from 180 to 210, right? And that's about a 17% increase. But then you have to consider, right? These are all bundles. These are all bundles of products. They don't just include one product, they include 7 products and 14 products and 21 products and 22 and 25 products. With finance, right? You have there's at least like 10 modules within Dynamics. Those are basically each one of those is like an app within the system. So if you do it on a like the percentage, if you divide the percent increase by the number of products, right, you get the percent increase per app or per product, right? So you're looking at this, it's really 3% or 0.7, like it goes down as low as 0.4%. And then you have Power BI PPU and Power BI Pro. They each are just one product. Okay, so you take the percent increase and divide it by 1, and so it's far worse than in more heinous, I guess you could say, then it just by looking, it's bad enough just looking at the percent difference and seeing a 40% versus the highest that's out there is 25, right? But then you look at it on a per app basis, it's just it's just god awful. I mean, it's just terrible. Um, and again, there's reasons for this stuff, right? I mean, and I have to say that I don't see any other way to put this other than the fact that Microsoft has poured just millions of dollars into Fabric, and it just has not generated net new revenue, right? I mean, if you think about it, again, premium users, they're transitioning to Fabric, but that's not net new revenue. That's just a forced migration. Synapse users, right? They're not migrating to Fabric because it's crazy expensive, right? Synapse is literally pay for what you use, okay? That is not what Fabric is, no matter how people try to spin it, that it is not the same pay for what you use the way Synapse is. All right. Um, Databricks and Snowflake users, again, they're not gonna, they're already set on their platforms. There's no reason for them to go to Fabric, right? There's something that's been coming up quite a bit lately also is organizations that have Microsoft 365 E5 licenses, right? Which include Power BI, right? And these E5 licenses, they include Power BI, Office 365, E5, etc. They include Power BI Pro, right? So if you're, let's say that, even if you have like 500 users that have Power BI Pro or 1,000 users that have, these E5s and they have Power BI Pro because of it, you're not going to go to Fabric, right? Because you're already paying for that E5 for the security pieces of it, right? And Power BI Pro kind of comes along for the ride, which is nice. So, you're not going to there's no reason for you to go to Fabric because you've already paid for the Pro licenses for everyone. So unless you absolutely need some Fabric feature or something like, some kind of premium feature, and that's where it makes no sense for you to go with the Power BI Premium and or Fabric at all. Because the big driving force behind going to like an F64 Plus is, hey, your Power BI users, they can use a free Fabric license or a free Power BI license, right? In the E5 license just totally negates that out of the, an advantage, really. Really, what you'd be doing is you're paying for the same thing twice, right? So that's an interesting one that I hadn't really thought of too much before. And it's also very interesting if Microsoft's trying to make the claim that, oh, well, this E5, Power BI we've added so much value to it over the last 10 decades that it's justified by hiking it up by 40%, right? The E5 license, right, is what went up the least. And it only went up 9%, right? And by per app, it's by 0.4%. So, that argument really doesn't hold any water. Why wasn't it, if you added so much value to Power BI Pro, then you should have hiked this price up too, because it includes Power BI Pro. So you have that sort of, and then you have like your average Power BI shops, right? They love the reporting of Power BI, but they already have a data warehouse sitting in a SQL server, probably, right? They don't have these big data needs, or they already, have something like Databricks or Snowflake, or Synapse that they'd have, right? They already have these systems in place. There's just no reason to convert this to Fabric, right? So the failure of Fabric to generate net new revenues, well, there's a solution for it, right? You charge Power BI Pro users more, or you jack up their licenses by 40%, and that, basically salvages and pays off, your all the millions of dollars that you spent on Fabric and didn't generate one dime of net new revenue, right? So that's in a nutshell, that's what's going on in my opinion. And then you have the bonus, aspect of, well, we've changed the calculus for Power BI Pro users. Now it's 350 users, and then it makes sense to go in and get a Fabric premium capacity F64 SKU, right? Because, versus 500 users and that. So, and because Microsoft's firmly convinced that Fabric is the greatest thing ever, right? And if they can just get people to use it, that they would, people would get hooked on it and they use more and more and more of it, right? They're thinking in terms of like, well, that's how Azure works, that's how the cloud works. We get people into the cloud and then they love it and then just keep using more and more and more of it. The problem with Fabric is they're wrong, right? It's the same, concept that the Synapse folks had. And gee, what is Fabric? But if not just reporting Synapse into the Power BI service, in a sense, for looking at the simplest terms. And so it's all the salespeople. When the salespeople could never understand why they just lost over and over and over and over again to Databricks and Snowflake, right? They're like, Synapse is the greatest. Well, how can we be losing? Well, we must have to just rebrand it to Fabric and throw it into Power BI platform, and and this is why, if we dial back, like it's almost like we're closing in on almost 2 years now since Fabric was announced. I always thought this was the dumbest thing. And you've seen on my channel, I've talked about it. I'm pretty much very little to say that's good about Fabric. And it's, and why would we, right? They're jacking our prices up for Power BI. They're adding no value, and they just made a mess of everything. It's sad to see Power BI, which was such a great shining triumph from Microsoft, probably one of the best things they've ever done, in terms of their entire history. That they've gone and managed to screw it up this badly. So that's all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.